Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We start the part 2 of the video on November 19, paper 4-2. And in this video, we're going to be handling question 5, 6, and 7. November 19, paper 4-2. We start with question 5. Now, question 5 is a part. Figure 5.1 shows the seaweed, Laminaria hyperborea. This is a photosynthetic protoctist. Photosynthetic protoctist. Protoctists are unicellular, and there are two of them. One is a protozoa and one is of course, a plant. So photosynthetic protoctist found in the coastal waters around Norway. The seaweed is grown commercially to obtain the glucose polysaccharide called alginate. This is used in certain food products. Now they've given you the picture of this Laminaria hyperborea, plants growing underwater in limited light. Figure 5.1, and that is showing you this. An increase in carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere has resulted in higher concentrations of carbon dioxide in the ocean. This has caused a decrease in the pH of the ocean. So more carbon dioxide means more carbonic acid. As they're more in the air than more in the ocean, so this is called a decrease in the pH of the ocean, because more acid means decrease in the pH and has resulted in ocean acidification. Scientists are studying seaweeds such as Isle Hyperborea because they absorb a large quantity of carbon dioxide during photosynthesis. This may help to increase the pH of the ocean and reverse ocean acidification. Actually, if the plants take in the carbon dioxide, so this would increase the pH, and this will reverse or reduce the ocean acidification. So first we've got to understand uh, the question properly, and then we've got to reread the question and then understand it so that we are absolutely clear when we are answering. So number one, first of all, what we have to understand: increase in CO2 concentration in the atmosphere resulted in higher concentrations of carbon dioxide in the ocean. Decrease in pH of the ocean resulting in ocean acidification. Then scientists are studying seaweeds because they absorb a large quantity of carbon dioxide. This may help to increase the pH of the ocean and reverse the ocean acidification. State where light absorption occurs in the chloroplast of L. hyperborea, naturally thylakoid membranes or the grana or the lamellae. Name one product of the light independent stage. Now there are actually three products which you must know. One is reduced NADP. Now where you go wrong is you write NAD. If you write NAD, well, there's no marks for that. Reduced NADP is the answer. P for photosynthesis, you can even remember it like that. And ATP is made and oxygen is produced by the photolysis of water. We come to the part 3 of the question. Same question: outline the reactions occurring in the stroma that lead to the chloroplast. The inside of the chloroplast is called stroma. So it's very easy to remember that, because you have to remember is stroma, chloroplast. The last two words in chloroplast are ST and ST for stroma. So chloroplast has the liquid part inside is called the stroma. The first sentence has been completed for you. And what is the first sentence? The first sentence is carbon dioxide binds to RUBP. So there's no mark for that. They've given that to you, so they want you to start off with that. Now, the main point is Rubisco is an enzyme which is needed for it. It combines with carbon dioxide to form an unstable 6-carbon compound, and this 6-carbon compound immediately splits into two molecules of GP, and then GP reduced to TP. Now we can write these. These are the standard abbreviations which are acceptable in the Cambridge mark schemes. Now GP reduced to TP. Now GP is reduced to TP. Why? Because using reduced NADP and reduced NADP and ATP. Then TP is used to form glucose. Then the glucose molecules are put together by either you can say polymerization or you can say condensation, and it's going to formation of glycosidic bonds, and we're going to get all the different polymers from this. So ATP used to form glucose, and the glucose is then used to make starch or make anything else which the plant needs. Come to the B part of the question. Laboratory experiments were carried out to investigate the effect of day length on the rate of photosynthesis in another marine autotroph, Zostera marina. The temperature was controlled at 4 degrees Celsius. A low concentration of carbon dioxide dissolved in the water was used. The light exposure period day length was different for 5 groups of Z marina. This was maintained for 10 days to allow Z marina to adapt to these conditions. After 10 days, the rate of photosynthesis was measured for each group under the same controlled conditions. The experiment was repeated using 5 groups of Z marina with a high concentration of carbon dioxide dissolved in water. So we had low concentration of carbon dioxide, 5 groups, and then 5 groups were exposed to a high concentration of carbon dioxide dissolved in water. Then table 5.1 shows the rate of photosynthesis for each group. Now looking at this table, what do we have? We have day length in hours 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Then we have low carbon dioxide. We have rate of photosynthesis in arbitrary units. This was 2, 3, 4, 5.5, 7.5. So it's going up. In high, it is going up a little. I think it's going up a little more, 2.5, 5, 7, 11, 18. So look at the beginning and look at the end. I always do that. Is when I'm doing this paper, I always sort of circle parts which are important. And you look at the table very carefully, you'll see the increase. This was 2 to 7.5, so it's 5.5, 2.5 to 18 is a much larger increase, so it's about. So this is how we are going to read this question. Then we go on to, with reference to table 5.1, explain the difference in the rate of photosynthesis at high carbon dioxide concentration compared to low carbon dioxide. So it's an explain. So whenever there's an explain, we have to give some biological story. So more carbon dioxide reacts with RUBP, more Calvin cycle. So more rate of photosynthesis is measured by more Calvin cycle, more glucose made. Then we come on to the part 2 of the question. Now the part 2 of the question says with reference to table 5.1. So we are again now referring to table 5.1. We haven't sort of now describe and explain the effect of increasing day length on the rate of photosynthesis. Now if you look at the table, let's now just pause and look at the table. As day length increases, rate of photosynthesis also increases, because it said you compared it with the high carbon dioxide concentration. So as day length increases, the rate increases, more light absorbed. So this was the describe. But now this is the explanation. The explanation is coming here. Let's look at the explanation now. The explanation is this: more light absorbed by photosystems, more photolysis, more oxygen, more NADPH, ATP, glucose, starch produced. Or you could have given me figures from the data, and then also that could have proved your point. So whenever it says describe, it's no biology. You just give me figures from the data. If it's an explain, then you give me points. Explanation means biological explanations. Then coming to the C part of the question, in the laboratory, a seaweed was grown in water with a different pH values. All other variables, including temperature and light, were standardized. The mean rate of photosynthesis was calculated over a 24-hour period for each pH value. So the results are shown in figure 5.2. Mean rate of photosynthesis in arbitrary units, and the pH here we have three values: 7.8, 8.1, and 8.4. Now we need to understand what the question is, and then we need to go back to the graph again. With reference to 5.2, explain the effect of the rate of photosynthesis when the pH increases from 8.1 to 8.4. Optimum pH of Rubisco, explain. So there's no describe, it's just an explain. Optimum pH of Rubisco, fewer protons result in higher rate of photosynthesis. So when the pH is more, it means less hydrogen ions. So fewer protons result in a higher rate of photosynthesis or more activity of the enzyme. Part 2 of the question was very basic. The lower pH values on figure represent ocean acidification. Suggests why the results for the lower pH values do not fully support the idea that seawards can help to reduce ocean acidification. Yes, because you see less carbon dioxide absorbed, so ocean acidification not reduced. So what we have to understand is that if photosynthesis is not going to increase, CO2 is not going to be absorbed. So less CO2 absorbed, so ocean acidification was not reduced. Next we come to question 6. The genus Heliconius contains more than 40 species of brightly patterned butterflies. Researchers have investigated in the laboratory how one species, Heliconus herupa, could have developed as a separate species. Now, whenever it talks of a separate species, you've got to think of speciation, allopatric, sympatric, and that should cross your mind immediately. The phenotype of HH is intermediate between the two other species HC and HM. I usually just take the first letter. Laboratory breeding experiments showed that matings between HC and HM, parent species, produce fertile hybrid offsprings. Second point, controlled matings of the hybrids produces individuals identical in appearance to HH within 3 generations. Hybrid butterflies prefer to mate with each other rather than with individuals of either of the parent species. We read this once again. Laboratory breeding experiments showed that mating between HC and HM produce fertile hybrids. Then, second point, controlled matings of the hybrids produced individuals identical in appearance to HH within 3 generations. Then, hybrid butterflies prefer to mate with each other rather than individuals of either of the parent species. The researchers concluded that HH species could contain DNA from the 2 parent species as a result of hybridization. Suggest with reasons one prediction that can be made about the chromosome numbers of HC and HM. They're the same. Why are they the same? Because the hybrids are fertile. They're the same chromosome number as the hybrids are fertile. And homologous chromosomes pair up and meiosis occurs. So this was the reason why we would say that the chromosome numbers are the same, because hybrids are fertile. That's what it said in the question, fertile hybrid. And homologous chromosomes pair up, and of course meiosis occurs, so that is why we say it is the same. Then we come to the second part of the question. Now the second part of the question is again a very, very direct question, but if you can figure it out from the question. The researchers thought that because the hybrid butterflies prefer to mate with each other, this could make speciation more likely. If it's speciation, well then of course you write everything you know about speciation. Give reasons why the researchers thought this made speciation more likely. Number one, reproductive isolation, no gene flow with the parent species. Behavioral isolation, so hybrid gene pool maintained. Different mutations, natural selection, pre-zygotic isolating mechanisms, and sympatric speciation. So writing all of that was going to get you your 4 out of 4. I mean, any 4 out of these. I'm not saying all of these, but any 4 out of these. And it was a question which, you required your common sense to talk about speciation and give me all the details about speciation, and some of it would naturally be correct, and you'd get your 4 out of 4 in this part of the question. Coming to the B part of the question, Heliconius butterflies taste unpleasant predators such as birds. Heliconius butterflies taste unpleasant to predators such as birds. The bright colors of the wings of the butterfly act as warning so that birds avoid eating them. Individual birds have to learn which patterns to avoid. If one Heliconius species is abundant, or it has a pattern shared with another similar species, predators learn to avoid this pattern faster. Therefore, this pattern provides a selective advantage. In the wild, heliconius hybrids occur in small numbers and have patterns that do not resemble the established morning pattern of other parent species. These hybrids have a selective disadvantage, naturally because they're eaten up by the predators. This is an example of post-zygotic isolating mechanism. Post-zygotic means after zygote has been formed and then the whole thing has developed. Explain how selection Explain how selection against hybrids can act as a post-zygotic isolating mechanism. Now, these hybrids are eaten, they die. Hybrid gene pool not maintained, parents better adapted. And this would be classified as disruptive selection because some are at a major disadvantage, and that is you remember disruptive, we have a graph like this. So these are at a disadvantage. So disruptive selection would have occurred. Naturally, post-zygotic. Post-zygotic means once they've developed. So this was the said patterns do not resemble the established warning pattern of eyes. These hybrids have a selective disadvantage. They're easily eaten up. While the other ones were not eaten up because their pattern on their wings was easily identifiable, and predators learn to avoid this pattern faster. Says here in the question. Predators learn to avoid this pattern faster. So that means if they didn't eat them, and of course their numbers would increase, and the others who are at a disadvantage, their numbers would decrease. And then coming to the last question, question 7. The Venus flytrap, whatever, is a carnivorous plant native to wetlands of the east coast of the USA. Mineral ions from decayed organisms are often washed away in these wetlands. Figure 7.1 shows a Venus flytrap. Suggests why a Venus flytrap benefits from catching insects in these wetlands. Because it has a low mineral content of the soil. There are less nitrates, less phosphates, less sulfates. So if they don't get enough nitrates, then they're not going to make enough proteins. So while taking in an insect, the insects provide the amino acids for the growth. Because otherwise, you see, you need normal plants need nitrates for their growth. Nitrates from the soil combine with glucose to form amino acids. But as there are not enough mineral ions so in the soil, so they are at a disadvantage and they will not grow. Then coming to the part B of the question 1, the leaves of the Venus flytrap will close if stimulated by an insect. State which part of the leaf detects the stimulus, that is the hair, the sensory hair. And then part 2 says explain how the plant does not waste energy by closing when it does not need to, such as when a large drop of rain touches the receptor. So basically what happens is at least two of the hairs must be touched within 35 seconds or 30 seconds for it to close up. So if there's rain or if there's a wind and there's a dust particle washed or a piece of broken leaf, uh, a piece of broken leaf carried by the wind to this, and then it would not close on it because two hairs must be touched within a very short time. That short time is about, I think, 35 seconds. So it will not close on that. So it doesn't waste its energy because if it's just a raindrop or if it's a piece of leaf, it's not going to close on it. Then we come to the C part of the question. Figure 7.2 is a graph of an action potential in a human neuron. So now let's look at it very carefully. We have it here. This is the resting potential. Let me give it another color so that it becomes more prominent. So this is the resting potential, which is around about minus 70 millivolts. And then we see this is the depolarization, and then we have the repolarization, which is coming. Then we have the hyperpolarization. So this would be let me give it another color. This would be the hyperpolarization, and then of course it is back to the resting potential here. So minus 70 millivolts goes up to plus 40, and then the hyperpolarization goes up to somewhere here, which is nearly minus 90. So we've got the hyperpolarization, we've got the resting potential minus 70, we've got the, let's look at the, here we've got the depolarization is within 1 to 2, within 1 millisecond. So because this was 1 and this was 2, I mean, just going to rub it off again. So it's between, this is between 1 and 2, so 1 millisecond. Then let's look at the comparison here. The resting potential here is, I'm going to give it another color. The resting potential here is 0 millivolts. And then we have the depolarization which goes up here. And then we have the repolarization which goes up here. And then we have got a very, very massive, so this is the repolarization. But then let's look at another thing. Let me give you another color. The hyperpolarization is this part, and then this is the hyperpolarization. This is the hyperpolarization, and then of course it returns to the resting potential here, back again to the zero. So the hyperpolarization is much more than, because we're going to compare the two graphs. And then let's look at the action potential. The action potential is here between this point and this point. This is the action potential. And this is now, if you look at the figures here, so we need to compare this graph with the previous graph. And this went up to, yes, the depolarization went up to plus 20. Now, if we compare this with the previous diagram, this is the previous diagram, minus 70 millivolts to plus 40. And then let's look at all this and we compare this is of course what we need to compare. Let me give it again the same color. So this is the hyperpolarization here. And look at the hyperpolarization in this case. So we need to be comparing the two because this is what is going to be asked in the question which we are going to have. Then we look at the stimulus. The stimulus is here. This is the stimulus here. While in this situation, this is the stimulus here. So we need to look at it how the depolarization and the repolarization. And in this situation, you see what we have to understand. This is the action potential. The action potential is up to here because the stimulus was here. And here, look at the action potential. The action potential is, the stimulus was here. So let's do a comparison and let's see what are the questions which are being asked. Now it says with reference to figure 7.2 and 7.3, describe how the action potential of the Venus flytrap differs from that of a human. Smaller depolarization, longer duration of action potential, longer duration of hyperpolarization, longer refractory period, resting potential 0 millivolts, while here in humans it was minus 70 millivolts. So these are the things we need to look back at the graph and then see it: smaller depolarization, longer duration of action potential, longer duration of hyperpolarization, and longer refractory period, and resting potential 0, and that was minus 70 millivolts. Now coming to the last part of it, the D part of the question was again very, very tricky and very difficult. It was 5 marks. Describe how the production of action potentials in the leaf cells of the Venus flytrap can result in leaves closing and trapping an insect. Well, we had to figure this out. Some of it is that we've studied before. Depolarization reaches the lobe of the leaf, the hinge or the midrib cells, H positive ions pumped out of the cell wall becomes loosens, like we've studied this in another hormone as well. Then the calcium pectate dissolves, then the calcium ions enter the cell, water enters by osmosis, midrib cells expand, and the leaves become concave. So, a little difficult, I feel. All this detail is not really specified in the syllabus, but still, then we needed to know all this. So, depolarization reaches the lobe of the leaf, midrib cells actually reaches the midrib cells, and the midrib cells respond. H positive ions pumped out of the cell wall loosens, calcium pectate dissolves, and the calcium enters the cells, water enters by osmosis, midrib cells expand, leaves become concave. Then we come to the last part of this section. B was 9 and 10, and then of course you have to make a choice. You only do one question. I always tell you to read this before you start the section A. So you have to say, compare the characteristic feature members of the kingdom fungi and animalia, then method used in breeding programs for endangered animal species, and outline the problems that may occur with these programs. That was a 15 marks. And the second was describe the features of ATP that make it suitable for this role as a universal energy currency of cells. Describe how it carry out investigation on the effect of temperature on the rate of respiration of yeast in anaerobic conditions. Redox indicator methylene blue. So you have to figure it out which question you're going to do. Please do not start one and do a little bit and then leave it and start the next question. It's a very important decision is that you make a rough and you write some points and you say how many points do you know for question 9, and then you look at question 10 and then you just write down one or two words and just see how many points do you remember. So are you coming up with enough points, and then you take the decision whichever one is better, you just do that. So you need to do some rough work before you really actually decide whether you're going to do 9 or 10. That finishes paper, and I wish you all the luck, and thank you very much.